All right. Hello, everybody. Hope you guys can hear me. Usually when I do these presentations, I plant someone as my thumbs up person to let me give me those nods and things. I can't see anybody at all. I'm just looking at the PowerPoint. So I'm hoping you can all hear me and see me and everything, and you're all staying awake and everything. So we're really grateful for you guys to come here. This is a very important topic, and it's a good thing you came out to try to learn more about it. It's as you know, I don't have to tell you, you see what's going on in the world. There's a lot of stress and anxiety. So this is really an important thing. And also, it's good to know that it was warned that I'll be being recorded. I got to try really hard not to say anything stupid or end up on a YouTube video somewhere. But so normally, we like to keep it interactive. But because of the size of the group, we'll have to just go through our PowerPoint and then we'll look forward to your questions at the end. And also, we're going to send a follow-up email. We're going to have Dave send it. We're going to provide our information because, Aubrey and I are very committed to this, to helping people. We work. CPC is a nonprofit, and we really want to try to help people. So we're going to put our information. So if anybody has follow-up questions or whatever, we can point you in the right direction if that's something we can do for you. So let's get started here. So I'm going to move this. Yeah, as you know, a lot is going on. I don't have to go through it. I mean, people are triggered. There was a big anxiety problem in the world before COVID-19. I call it the anxiety epidemic because it's really been bad. It's one of the main reasons why people come to CPC. A lot of depression as well. So COVID-19, I mean, the pandemic has only made things worse. And then you add all the other things going on in the world. There's the different political unrest and all the things. So it's a very stressful world to live in. I'm sure I'm not shocking anyone by saying that. So this is a timely thing to go over. So why is it not? So this is my name is Ken Pecoraro, and I've been at CPC for 19 years. I love working there. Aubrey is new to CPC, but she's been in the field for an extremely long time. It's all I've ever done. Just a brief thing about me. I came from a dysfunctional background, and I already knew I was kind of being groomed to be a counselor from a young age because I was doing counseling with my friends and family, for as long as I could remember, just being in a dysfunctional situation. So it's all I've ever done with high school, college, and I've been a counselor for over 25 years. I'm the head of the addiction department, but I'm also licensed in mental health because at CPC, most of the people that come to our addiction department also have a mental health issue as well. I don't know if you want to give a little background, Aubrey.
Hi, yes. I've been in the field about 20 years. I actually have done various aspects of therapy, whether it's addictions, mental health. I spent a lot of time in the medical community, working with doctors and, nurses to coordinate care for people with medical issues. I am new to CPC, but I have been in the field a long time. I also am an adjunct professor at Monmouth University, and I do teach graduate level therapists and train them how to work with people with mental health issues. So I'm really excited to be a part of this today. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay. Between us, we have decades. We kind of covered that. Okay. So usually you should have goals. It's one seminar. If we could have one goal, that's to help people, the listeners, to learn some skills, some things to take away there to adapt and build resilience in these changing times. That's probably the most important quality that we need right now. We see that actually studies show that with children and with adults as well, people with resilience do better. And if you really want to think about what resilience is, it's very simple. You think about a rubber band or a spring. It's that ability to bounce back. Right now, it's kind of, people keep saying the new normal and this is the way we have to be now. And, the resilient people are going to be moving forward. So if we can give you some tools to be resilient, then we've achieved our goal. So, there's only so much you can do in an hour, but we definitely want to at least point you in the right direction. Okay. Real quick quiz. None of this is earth-shattering, but in terms of, it kind of gives you a gauge of how prevalent mental health is. So we're going to go quickly through this. These are from some, I gave you the websites where I got some legitimate studies shown here. According to research done by SAMHSA, that's the U.S. Substance Use and Mental Health Administration, what percentage of adults are currently living with a mental health condition? If you were doing this in a smaller group, I'd get your answers, but if you had to take a guess, what do you think? It's interesting. About 20% of United States adults live with a mental health disorder. That's 1 in 5. So that's not just I feel anxious sometimes or I'm a little stressed out. That's with a diagnosable disorder. That's where like a doctor or a licensed therapist can sit down and go through criteria and actually determine the disorder. That's so 20% of that's at any given time right now. And again, these are pre-COVID-19 figures. I'm sure these are going up. I know the government is putting a lot of money into researching this, but it's a lot. It's a significant amount. So odds are some people here have something going on as well. At least 1 out of 5 of you, right? And what percentage of adults will experience mental illness at some point in their life? Well, fortunately, it's not 100%, not everybody, thank God, but 46%, about half of all people will, at some point, if you look through their life history, they will have a period where they meet the criteria for a diagnosable mental illness at some point, whether that's anxiety, depression, and all the host of disorders in between, substance use disorder. It's a lot. It's a lot. Very prevalent. Again, pre-COVID-19 figures. I'm sure that's gone up now. True or false, depending on which study you read, about half of all people who suffer from substance use disorders also have at least one mental health disorder. And yes, that is true. And if you go to a place like CPC, where that's what we specialize in our addiction department, again, this is the addiction department, people who come primarily for substance use, about 85% of our clients in the addiction department have a diagnosable second mental health issue. So they call that co-occurring disorder. It's very common. The two go hand in hand. And I'm sure you guys have heard that, the underlying, a lot of people use substances to, they say the term self-medicate. They're really dealing with a depression and anxiety, and that's kind of driving these substance use disorders quite often. So what are some signs somebody might have a substance use disorder? I highlighted some of the main things: feeling guilty about use, having someone complain about your use, using for more often or for larger amounts. So the typical example of that is the guy or woman who says, I'm going to stop at the bar, just have 2 drinks. Next thing you know, it's 11 o'clock at night, and their spouse is calling, where are you? And they've put away 6 or 7. So yeah, losing control of the amount using, obviously neglecting other responsibilities, not showing up for work, hangovers, all that stuff. Which ones are signs? E or E all? All of those are signs. But the problem is people minimize, they make excuses of these signs. And you've heard of denial. It's not just something you see on TV. It's a very common issue out there. People say, oh, I can stop anytime I want to. I can control it. But if there's one thing that's going kind of really out of control right now, it is substance use. And especially the opioid problem was really, really bad before COVID-19, and it's only gotten worse. But one thing we had a huge uptick in is drinking. People are drinking like crazy now, and you can see why. You can understand there's less parameters to kind of keep people in check. Usually somebody might not have a substance use problem, but having more time at home, more anxiety, working from home, there's that like, hey, I can get up a little later tomorrow. Why not have a few extra drinks tonight? And it's kind of spiraling out of control. So it's something to keep an eye on. True or false? 1/3 of U.S. adults have experienced an anxiety disorder at one point in their lives. I'm sure you guessed it. True. That's the most common form. I talked about the anxiety epidemic. It's that prevalent. About 1/3 of all adults have had anxiety disorders of various kinds. And there's so many. There's OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, generalized anxiety disorder, panic disorder. There's so many. But when you consider all those different disorders, about 1/3 of all U.S. adults have experienced some kind of anxiety disorder. So why do something about it? Because look at these areas that can be affected: family functioning, work performance, sleep and appetite, physical health, social relationships. So obviously the answer to this one is F. All of those life areas can be affected when you have an untreated mental health disorder. Chronic depression can even be fatal. We hear about suicide, and it happens to all walks of life: rich, poor, young, old, and the increase in suicide among older adults is there's been a spike with that as well. probably because of the economy, who knows why, but it can be a potentially fatal illness. So, to not treat it, to think that I'm going to just get better by thinking happy thoughts. If you have a disorder, it's something more serious that you should look into. So really briefly, and if you want to share anything on top of this, Aubrey, please. So what is anxiety? You hear all the time, it's your body's natural response to stress. So if you're in a stressful environment, you're supposed to have some anxiety and there's some fear. And there are things you're supposed to be afraid of. If like, let's say a truck is driving really fast at you, you should be anxious. You know what I mean? Like, if you're around a loose wild animal, you should be anxious. That's a natural response. But the problem, when it becomes a disorder, is when it's interfering with your life, when now you're not functioning the way you should be.
I always also say that, there's a healthy level of anxiety. Anxiety, it can be really beneficial and really help you kind of grow, and it can really help actually with your work performance. Sometimes it drives you to do better. It drives you to meet deadlines, but also it can be really debilitating if it starts to, like Ken said, interfere with multiple areas of your life. Now other areas are being affected, and you might see a decline. So I always say, when I learned about a lot of these disorders, I started self-diagnosing myself when I was in grad school. I thought I had everything under the sun. Some of these everybody has at some point in their life. But if you notice that your anxiety is causing you to have that extra glass of wine, or that, you're having trouble sleeping and it's starting to affect you physically, that's when you may have an anxiety disorder.
Right. It can be very uncomfortable to live with anxiety. You're going to see a link between anxiety and depression. They go hand in hand. Let's free this up on me. Annotation thing showed up here. So depression, same thing. Everybody's had the blues, feeling down. You break up with your girlfriend or whatever when you're a teenager, you feel down for a little while. But depression as a disorder is when that doesn't go away, or when it's those feelings of sadness are so intense that you feel like getting up, you don't feel like facing the day, you don't feel like doing the things that used to be pleasurable for you. You used to like to take those walks or go out, whatever it is you like to do, and now you don't want to do it anymore. So again, it's that the biggest indicator is that impact on your life functioning. You wanted the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, just to reiterate again, everybody has periods of down in their lives, and especially right now, I think it's, we are very isolated. There is something about human connection that can help boost your mood, whether it's the fact that the gyms are closed. I know a lot of us use that as a coping mechanism to fight depression, because it creates endorphins, which are and increases dopamine, which are natural, medications for depression. But it is treatable, and we are seeing people really, really struggling at this time with all areas of their life because of the social isolation of COVID.
And some aspects of depression to just to think about it. We hear a lot about feelings of helplessness, hopelessness, or worthlessness, or any combination. Sometimes people have all three. And again, you see this COVID-19 kind of lends itself to that feeling of what's the point of trying anymore? It's so hard out there. And if you almost always, I don't want to say 100% of the time, but when you're really getting down to the root of depression, it almost always ties to some kind of loss. People get depressed when someone dies. They get depressed when they lose their job. They get depressed when they lose their relationship. And now think of how much loss all of us are going through now. We're losing we can't go to where we want to do. We can't be who we want to be with. And so this is a very depressing situation. So if you're feeling a little depressed, it's almost expected at this point. So, but again, we're going to talk about resilience and making a comeback from that. In addiction, there's a lot of definitions. It's always being redefined, but this is a good one that just came out in 2019. Addiction is a treatable chronic medical disease involving complex interactions among brain circuits, genetics, the environment, and an individual's life experiences. People with addiction use substances or engage in behaviors that become compulsive and often continue despite harmful consequences. It's a mouthful, but some things to take out of there. That's what being an addiction counselor, one of the most common questions you get. Do you think I'm an addict? I get that all the time. And it's not so cut and dry. There's, as you can see, it's a complex thing. There's definitely a genetic piece. We've seen that just even before we've had studying genes and stuff. You go back to even in the 60s, they knew it. Because when you study adoption studies, you take a kid who has two addicted parents or one addicted parent, take that kid out of the environment, put him in a non-addicted environment. They're still seeing addiction passes on through genetics. But also life experiences. Sometimes even in twin studies, one twin becomes addicted and the other doesn't because the life experiences were different and the perception was different. The most important thing to think of if you are self-diagnosing, do I have a problem, is are consequences stopping you? A good example is a DUI. And I don't want to say, obviously I'm a drug and alcohol counselor. I say, don't drink and drive. It's a stupid move with Uber out there. Nobody should do it. But if you go through a lot of society, most of people's history, there's probably that night where you took a chance. And I'm not advocating that. Where you said, you woke up next day, you're like, damn, I shouldn't have did that. Whatever, I drove a 5-minute drive. I could have got a DUI. I was probably a little close to the limit, maybe a little over. Most people, when they get that first DUI, it's such a pain in the butt that all those consequences change the behavior. That's what the consequences are there for. That's why a DUI has all those fees and loss of license, because it's supposed to make you say, man, I better change my behavior. But when you start talking about people with 2 DUIs, 3 DUIs, that's because now the consequences don't matter. It's a problem. So if family is complaining and you're still going, or if you feel guilty about it, or if you're missing work, or if, all those things, if the consequences are piling up, you're not paying bills, it's time to look back and say, maybe this is more than I bargained for.
Just to add on to that, I think when I came into the addictions field, there's this perception that, you had to be a heavy user of any substance to be considered, to have an addiction. And I like the point of that, you talk about consequences, because, it doesn't matter if you have 10 drinks or 2 drinks. It's what happens when that happens. Some people, really have a brain circuit issue when it comes to mixing substances. I had an old friend that was in recovery, and he used to make the joke of, I'm allergic to alcohol. Every time I drink it, I break out in handcuffs. And that was just a kind of a funny statement that he used to make, because, he really did have a physical allergy to it. Every time he drank, something bad would happen. Or there would be some sort of guilt associated with it. So again, it doesn't really have to be, it doesn't have to be this idea that you have to be an opioid user, or, that you have to use cocaine or some of these more illicit substances. I think one thing that's coming also is marijuana. It's becoming more socially acceptable. It's on the brink of recreational legalization. People are on medical marijuana. Some people have a negative response to it, despite that, it's somewhat benign, side effects at times. So it's really about your brain circuits, and to kind of take the addiction out of being a behavior and kind of being a medical, disease and a genetic link can sometimes be really helpful in helping you get treatment for it.
Right. When in doubt, it can't hurt to get an assessment. You or a family member. I always say, just because you come to a place like CPC for an assessment doesn't mean we're going to put you in a program. We might tell you, all right, this is something you just come in for a few sessions for some education, and or put you in actual treatment. You never know. So it can't hurt to get a professional consultation. So what stops people from getting mental health or substance use problems? You hear the word stigma all the time, and people kind of stigmatize themselves. They let the stigma get to them in the sense like, oh, people are going to think I'm crazy, or what are my neighbors going to think if they find out, or what's my mother or my family going to think? And, the professional field is trying more and more to get substance use and mental health viewed as they should be, as diseases. You wouldn't ignore your diabetes. You shouldn't ignore your diabetes, or your, God forbid, your cancer, and say, hey, I hope it's going to go away. Maybe this is just a phase. You would get the help you need. And the same thing for mental health. If it's impacting your life, getting the help is the thing to do. And letting, the shame and the guilt hold you back is very dangerous. And it's getting better, but that's probably the number one reason, other than denial, the number one reason why people don't get help. They fear that they're going to be judged, but really it's a good thing to look at, just like any other disease. There's no harm in just getting it checked out. It's not a lifetime commitment. People think that even things like medication, they're like, oh, I don't want to go on medication. I got to be on it for the rest of my life. Some people, yes, but not everybody. Some people get through what they got to get through, and they get some coping skills, and they go off the medication. It's a case by case basis. But if we can get one message out there, just seek the help that you if you think or if it's for a loved one, it's better to get a consultation. I don't know if you wanted to say anything more.
No, you covered it. Thank you.
Okay. Yep. So an illustration, I use this all the time. It's kind of hammers my point home. Somebody used this with me. Funny, it wasn't even a mental health person. It was a grandma figure in my life said this to me, and I was like, man, that's good. I'm going to use that. And I've been using it for a long time. The garden illustration. So just about everybody understands what it's like to take care of a lawn. And when you take care of a lawn, whether you've done it yourself or you've somebody in your family's taking care of it, or you have landscapers, you want your lawn to look nice. But let's say you got to take care of it yourself and you're busy and you're stressed and you're rushed. What we often do, and I've done this many times, a lot of the people that are stuck in the lawnmower position, that don't want to do it, just want to get it over with, is you see those weeds growing and you just set the lawnmower nice and low and you cut it nice and low and say, it all looks like grass anyway, it'll be good. And you might fool people for a little while. But what ends up always happening, those weeds grow back. And that's a good illustration for mental health and substance use. People do things to cover it up. People might, use substances to cover up their anxiety illegally or legally or whatever, or they might do different negative behaviors, gambling or whatever. There's so many things. And it's just mowing that lawn. I'm just going to cover this up. I'm going to white knuckle it. But sooner or later, if it's a real problem, those weeds always sprout back. And you're not going to be the best person you can be. So obviously with a weed, what do you got to do? You got to take the time to get in there and pull the root out. And it's important. Again, we're talking about people with a serious, with a disorder, to get in there and get the help that you need. And whether that's through, it doesn't have to be through treatment, whether that's through a support group or through just an individual therapist, getting to the bottom of it and getting the help you need is very important. I don't know if you want to say anything.
Yeah, when we talk about addiction, I think people's immediate brains go to drugs and alcohol. But one thing I think we've really seen during this COVID, kind of isolation is a huge increase in food addiction, shopping addiction, online gambling addiction. I think that, and again, it's kind of, what is the root cause of this? COVID-19 kind of gave us the perfect environment to have these weeds grow back. But, how do we get to the root cause of what's beneath that? I know that I have a tendency to go shopping when or I feed my feelings. Everybody does it. It's human nature. But when does it become an issue where it's kind of impacting the rest of your life or your finances or your relationships with other people?
Right, and this also applies to mental health as well. There's that tendency to say, no, I'm not depressed, but if it's like that weed and it keeps coming back, and those feelings of being depressed and unmotivated keep coming back. It's time to take care of it. Same with anxiety as well. Help's available. Just ask for it. Again, there's no shame in asking for help. If I probably beat that point home, and I've been saying that point for 25 years, whether it's with kids, adults. People think that when you work for an agency, you're about, they're just asking for help because you want to make money. And CPC is a not-profit. It's one of the reasons I stayed at CPC for so long. I'm like, this place is about helping people first. But again, I'm not just talking about CPC, whether it's getting help through going to your primary care physician and talking to him or her, or again, calling your insurance company and getting a private therapist. Get the help. I can't stress that enough. It can't hurt. People think that they're going to go get help, and sometimes they're afraid. But it's really, if you get a good therapist, and it's very enriching experience actually. Let's talk about some strategies. So we want to leave you guys some stuff, and one of the most important things that you can do is we want you to give you some strategies for coping, staying productive, and keeping positive. And one thing just to start it off is keeping positive sounds like such a generic thing, such a cliche, but it is so important. And I'm going to give a little illustration about perspective. I use this one all the time too. I didn't make this one up. I heard it from somebody else and I've been using it for years. It's the ditch digger illustration. So there's two guys on the side of the road. Maybe you've heard this before. There's two guys on the side of the road and they're both digging ditches. And you go up to the first guy and he looks angry. He's stressed. He's digging the ditch and he's all mad and upset at the world. And you say to him, what are you doing? And he's like, I'm digging this damn hole. I can't wait till, I can be done with this. This is, he's got this really negative attitude. And he's not productive. He's not doing well. He's upset. You get the picture. You go up to the second guy and you say, hey, what are you doing? He's like, looks at you with a big smile on his face, a proud look on his face. He's working as fast as he can. He's like, I'm helping build a hospital. So you see the example. Same people, same thing, different perspective. Your perspective means everything. So keeping positive, that's if you're going to take one thing from this, coping skill number one, doing your best to be as positive as possible. I'm not saying, hey, embrace COVID with joy. Obviously, it's a stressful situation, but to look at the bright side. Like, for example, when people, as a supervisor at CPC, we have to deal with our people that come to us for supervision, and they're stressed out. They're like, oh, I can't stand it. And I say, but stay positive. Look, you got a job, man. Like, a lot of people don't have a job. I do that to myself when I'm like, oh, I can't stand working from home. I'm so lonely, bored. I miss the camaraderie of being around everybody. I don't miss the commute, though. But I say, you know what? I try to keep positive. I have a job. I know I have friends in HVAC business, different construction, and they're struggling or unemployed. So staying positive, and not to hammer, but it's such an important point. I don't know if you wanted to say anything about it.
No, all good.
Okay. So you'll hear about self-care all the time. Self-care. I think Facebook has become like self-care, mecca of the world. But you know what? There's a reason, because it's so important. So to do self-care, to make time for self-care in this time is so important. That's part of that is all of our routines have been thrown upside down now to start reestablishing healthy routines, whether that's exercise, going for walks. And you know what's interesting about exercise? Being a mental health and addiction counselor for all these years, how much we prescribe exercise, because there are zillions of studies that show exercise is one of the best anxiety and depression antidotes in the world. So I see that all the time. And it's not like, hey, you go lift weights once and you're like, wow, I feel great. It's not like that. You might be stressed. But when people establish a routine of exercise, it's amazing. Nothing's 100%. I'm not going to say, hey, run around the block for the next 30 days and you're going to be happy. But it's not like that for everyone. But the odds are for so many of us, it does help. All of our we have natural antidepressants and natural anti-anxiety medications in our own brain, and those chemicals come out when we exercise. I don't know if you wanted to jump in, or you want to, whenever you want. Aubrey.
Oh, well, absolutely. And I just speaking for personal experience, and again, this is why we have the need to take shame and stigma out of it, is that even as mental health professionals, I think that Ken and I can both agree that, during this whole thing, it is really uprooted all routines. And, and even we have experienced ups and downs during this whole thing. And, I think one of the most challenging parts for me was the fact that when the gyms closed down, I mentioned it earlier, that was something that I really used as an outlet for me with my healthy anxiety, or when I had a low mood or stressors in my life. And I was trying to establish a new routine and a new normal, as they say. And I kind of abandoned a lot of those things in order to develop a new work routine. Well, when I realized that this wasn't going away about 2 months ago, I said, I'm going to commit to doing outdoor exercise now that the weather's gotten better. And I cannot tell you the difference in the level of positivity that it's made in just my general attitude towards things. And, sometimes they always say in, 12-step rooms, you got to fake it till you make it. Sometimes we have to just push ourselves out of our comfort zone to start incorporating these healthy routines again.
Right. And it's like they say, that they say the 30-day rule. If you do something for 30 days, it eventually, you start to like it, believe it or not. Dieting, exercise, it starts to become something that you really want to do. So again, it might struggle in the beginning, but the best thing that, if you're going to start exercise, I tell people all the time, people feel the commitment to go for an hour. If you can't stand exercising, go for 10 minutes. and 10 minutes becomes 15, 15 becomes 20. That's how, every time I get away from exercise, that's how I get back. I'm like, I'm not going to go back for the full workout. I'm going back for 10 minutes just to get myself into the door. Sleep is another one. I'm kind of a hypocrite on that. I'm a chronic non-sleeper, but I've been sleeping more without that commute. I got to say, I like that little extra half-hour rest in the morning. Relaxation, learning tools to relax. There are so much out there. When we send our follow-up email, we will send some different apps and things to practice things. Something like breathing, the power of learning how to properly breathe. I'll give an example from my own life. I have 5 kids. I had my first 4 in 5 years, and they're older now, and it's a lot easier to deal with them now. But believe it or not, people say that the teenage years are the worst, but I'll take the teenage years over when they were all babies. I was suicidal at some point. It was a lot. We look back, me and my wife look back at it like people would talk about Vietnam. Like, how did we do that? But I can't tell how many times breathing got me through, like, punching a hole in the wall or screaming at somebody. Just being like, when you feel like you're going to rip your hair literally out of your head, just being like, taking that deep breath. Okay. And then just stops. It's like it actually hits the reset. And I know that sounds obvious and you're going to say, oh, they talk this, but to practice it, to learn it, and you can learn about grounding techniques. And that's like about feeling where you're sitting in the chair and getting in touch with your environment and noticing the birds chirping outside or the car beeping the horn. Those little things go such a long way. I also run an addiction department, which is a lot like taking care of 5 kids and practicing 2-minute vacations. I do it all the time. I'm sure your guys' job is stressful as well. And to get through the long day at work, those 2-minute vacations, I'd rather have my employees take those 2-minute vacations. Again, granted, they keep them to 2 minutes and not 20, but like that 2 minutes where you detach and you say, I'm going to do something fun. I'm going to think about the beach. I'm going to do whatever, something mentally enjoyable. That can make you so much more productive. And also, everything on the internet all days is about me. Believe it or not, there's the old biblical saying, there's more happiness in giving than receiving. That they've actually studied that. That's actually a true statement. So it is. You don't want to be just so me that you don't give anymore, because things like volunteer work and helping, getting outside of your world is actually good for you, but also save some me time as well. So it's about a balance. So I don't know if you wanted to say anything on those either.
I'm good.
Okay, so those are some tips right there, some things you could do. Again, make this part of your routine. Look at it like if you're anxious or stressed, when we detach from this today, sit down and plan out like how I'm going to start putting some of these things into your life and do them and practice them. Again, we'll send some information to follow. Okay, so I know in the email that Dave sent, I know you guys have a lot to deal with stress, and I understand the stress from work from home. Right now, my dog, hopefully somebody let him out, is kind of crying to get out of the room. I'm not going to get up to let him out, but I think he's stopped. But like things like that can stress you out. You know what I mean? But there's different new stresses to working at home. You know what I mean? Because now your worlds are colliding, and I think a lot of you guys are probably working at home. But there's that tendency to want to constantly know everything that's happening on the news and every bad thing and every chart and graph that shows the doom and gloom that goes on in the world. And you shouldn't keep your head under a rock, but you should limit it. All those warnings you get to limit it, they actually call it doom scrolling. I don't know if you've heard that term. You guys are in computers. I'm sure you've heard it. Those people that just keep scrolling and scrolling and scrolling, looking for more doom and gloom. It can be very counterproductive. So it's important, especially for a work from home employee. I apply this with myself all the time. For some reason, I was having this conversation with somebody else recently. When you work from home, for some reason, I feel more inclined to want to pick up my phone right away. I don't know why. In the office, you feel less inclined. You feel like, I can do that later. But at home, it's like, oh my God, I'm not near these people. I better answer every phone and text within. In fact, someone's texting me right now as we speak, and you feel that inclination to you have to do it right now. And it's important to set boundaries with yourself and to say those things to yourself, like, it's going to be okay if I detach for a few minutes. And again, you'll be more productive if you detach and you manage yourself. So setting those boundaries, saying, I'm going to stop working at 6 o'clock tonight or 5, whatever it is, or I'm going to, we got a comment coming. Yeah, definitely save it at the end. So obviously, if you're stuck in your home, make your home work environment as comfortable as possible. I'm in my nice big comfy chair right next to my bed. In fact, as soon as work's over, I can dive into bed and take a nap. I love that. I'm going to miss that when we have to go back to the office. But yeah, I love my comfortable environment. Why not? If you're going to work from home, why sit in a cramped space? And make your space as comfortable and nice as possible. And use your support system. I can't tell you like how much the people that are doing well right now, people are doing horrible. I'm not going to lie. As a general, the trend is downward, both in mental health and addiction. People are struggling, but the few that are doing well are if you want to look at a common denominator, it's people that have and use their support system. And I'm not talking about Facebook or social media. Not that that's not useful, but I'm talking about that connecting with people that care about you, people that you can talk to, and that are gonna they're gonna be not make it worse. And just you don't want to make it just a gossip fest or as they say, a bitch fest or whatever it is. People that are going to be there and give you caring, upbuilding encouragement. If you look at the root word encouragement, what's the root word? It's courage. If you walk away from conversations feeling like stronger and better, those are the kinds of support you want to have in your life. So I'm telling you, in the addiction program, that's the people who are doing well, the people that have support. It's always like that, but it's exponentially went up with that during COVID-19 because our supports have been cut away from us. So I don't know if you want to say anything about...
Just briefly, talking about detaching electronically, something that I really needed to do and focus on in this whole time is that I'm a notorious 3:30 a.m. waker. My phone, I charge my phone right next to me. I use it as my alarm clock, and I would end up not being able to go back to sleep right away and start scrolling through my emails. Then next thing I know, I'm in a wormhole of some kind, and it's 5:30 a.m. So what I've done is I've moved my phone outside of my bedroom into the kitchen area on a charger. And of course, I rationalize this. I'm like, well, I use it as my alarm clock. I can't get up. I actually ordered an alarm clock so that I could see what time it was and have an actual alarm and keep my phone out of the bedroom because it was just too tempting to wake up in the middle of the night and disrupt my routine. So doing little things like that, little tweaks like that can be really, really helpful for your mental health and your sleep patterns.
Absolutely. And having the discipline to apply these things, because everybody goes, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. And then they go their way and just live their life the way they were. So hopefully you guys, make some application, even if you take one or two of these points and go make some changes when you're done. Okay. So I want to leave time for questions. So I think we don't have too many more slides. One thing, there's so many things. These are CBT skills, or we do, it's called cognitive behavioral therapy. It's like the basis of a lot of the therapy you get in places like CPC. But you can do some of these skills on your own. And one of them, a couple of them really quicker. One of them, great, one of my favorites is cognitive reframing. And that's, you'll hear about the term catastrophizing. That's like looking at things as bad as they can. A good example of catastrophizing, I had a guy come to group once and he was late and he was all sweaty. This was again when we were in person. And we're like, what happened to you? Well, let's say his name was Jim. What happened to you, Jim? And he was like, oh man, I got a flat tire on the way here. I had to change it in the rain. And you know what he said afterwards? He's like, you know what though? If that's the worst thing that happened to me today, it's still a pretty good day. I was like, wow. That's cognitive reframing in act. Instead of being like, oh, I can't take it. Life stinks. I have this flat tire ruined my life. So another good example of cognitive reframing is you go, let's say you're a teenager example. Teenager breaks up with his or her boyfriend or girlfriend and, oh, I'm never going to be happy again. I lost the love of my life. Instead of saying no, reframing that to, I might be unhappy for a little while and it's going to hurt for a while, but eventually I will get better and I will move on and I will meet somebody else. So being able to take those negative thoughts, which we all think, and kind of churn them out in a more positive and realistic manner. Again, that's not ignoring the negative, because some things, life things are hard to deal with, but being able to do them, to reframe them in a positive manner. Another one is positive self-talk. To do presentations like this, you have to do positive self-talk. I used to be so afraid when I was younger, I would never do something like this. But because of positive self-talk, saying to myself, it's going to be okay. Even if I bomb, a million other people have bombed before me and a million other people will bomb after me. So what's the big deal? Something like that can be the difference between not doing a presentation like this and coping with the anxiety. Because we all get, me and Aubrey were like, are you anxious? I'm like, I've been doing this 25 years. I still get anxious before I do these things. Gratitude's another one. Again, the assignment of looking at the bright side in terms of actually taking the time to write it down before you go to bed, wake up in the morning, write down 3 things that you're grateful for each day. It sounds corny, but it's so powerful. And being aware, self-aware of your own thoughts and saying to yourself, like, you know, I say, we all do it. I'm like, oh my God, this sucks, man. I can't stand it anymore. I'm going to have to quit my job. This is going to be hell. You know, like whatever, your favorite supervisor quit. And you say to yourself, all right, I'm doing cognitive distortion right now. This is going to be difficult right now, but I'll get through it. So being aware when you start giving your own negative messages, because that's what depression is. It's negative message after negative message, and you start to believe it, and it becomes a cycle. You become like that rat on the wheel. Same thing with anxiety. Again, I know I want to leave some time for questions. So real quick, last ones. The world is very unmanageable. There's all that, you know, the political stuff going on, and people feel, and a lot of those causes are really important. But you got to choose your battles. What's worth your energy and what's not? Is getting into a Facebook fight with some knucklehead who view things a different way, is that worth your energy? Of you getting stressed? I say that about social media all the time. I'm like, am I getting more joy or more stress or more joy? Because if I feel stressed, I'm like, why? There's certain times I'm like, I want to make a comment. I'm like, you know what? I don't want to get into it. I want to just be happy. Those guys, I'm not going to win over hearts and minds by fighting every fight about things. A lot of these things, like people worry about, what am I going to do? What if I, there's an enhanced attention to sexual harassment and racism, as there should be, because these are real issues. But people worry, oh no, what if I say or do the wrong thing? You know what is an antidote to that? Just be nice. Focus on being as nice as you can, and you will most likely not be less inclined to say offensive things. Manage your news feed. Treat people the way you want to do, the way you want to be treated. Be assertive, and again with that, be nice. Don't be afraid to apologize and ask permission. If you're dealing with someone and you're afraid that you're going to say or do the wrong thing, to disrespect someone from a different race or a different sex, say, is it okay if we, is that okay that I worded that this way? Let them correct you. Be humble enough to do that. And obviously spirituality, not saying you have to go to church tomorrow, but people get misconstrued spirituality. Everybody could be spiritual no matter whether they believe it or not. And that's finding meaning and pursuing a purposeful life. Not just get caught up in the day to day. Be like, this is my to-do list today. I gotta take care of the kids and food shop and pay the bills. But no, looking at bigger things, going out and saying, I'm going to plan a vacation. That's a very spiritual thing, to go out and, go out to Lake George and float on a raft. It's one of my things I did this summer. And, and whether you believe in God or not, to have those moments to be like, oh, there's a bigger world out here than just me and my problems. So I wanted to leave time for questions. I think this is what you at the end. Oh, perfect. So hopefully we gave you a bunch to work with. I'll